Hey guys, my name is Nick and welcome to my channel where I cover all things entertainment. Whatever you're watching, I'm making videos about. And I regularly say that a lot of popular horror comedies don't really work for me because if they're too focused on the comedy, then the horror elements don't really work for me, but if it isn't that funny, then it's just a horror movie with a few laughs. It's hard to find that right balance. But I was going through Hulu, finding the best recommendations, as I do, and I happened to come across a bunch of movies that I think fall into this category, so I had to make a top 10. We're gonna head off the beaten path just a little bit because there's some dark comedies thrown into the mix, but all of these are movies, especially at the end of the list, that I've been wanting to talk about, so let's get into it. Number 10 is Good Boy, starring Judy Greer as a woman who gets an emotional support dog to help with her anxiety. It's just the thing because this dog turns into a vicious monster that eats anyone who stresses out his owner. This is one that definitely strikes that balance I'm looking for because it's regularly funny, but it uses the horror to push the story forward. I did a whole review on it if you want to check that out, but this is an installment in Hulu's Into the Dark series, their partnership with Blumhouse Productions. They put out an original themed movie for most holidays, and they're kind of fun. You might want to go through that collection because they have a bunch of horror comedies there. Number 9 is Villains, a crime comedy thriller starring Pennywise himself, Bill Skarsgård, and Micah Monroe as a couple of criminals on the run after committing a petty robbery. When their car breaks down in the middle of nowhere, they decide to continue their crime spree by breaking into a house in an attempt to steal another car. But turns out this house is owned by characters played by Jeffrey Donovan and Kira Sedgwick, even bigger villains, and they are hiding a dark secret in the basement. This one is super quirky, but I do feel like it didn't get weird enough for me. It didn't really fully go there, but it was still one of my favorite surprises from last year. It has great acting, fun surprises, and some disturbing elements. Everything you need to make a good creepy comedy. Number 8 is Mom and Dad, a throwback to 70s exploitation horror starring Nicolas Cage and Selma Blair. An odd case of mass hysteria sweeps suburbia, causing parents to violently turn on their own children. This one is funny without taking away from the horror, but it's also violent without getting too disturbing given its subject matter. I rewatched Mom and Dad recently, and the first time I didn't really care for it all that much, but on rewatch, I really enjoyed the way that this one maintained its tone, and I think it's quite underseen. Number 7 is Little Monsters, a Hulu original zombie comedy starring Lupita Nyong'o and Josh Gad. It's set in Australia and follows a slacker who is looking after his nephew on a school field trip to the petting zoo when a zombie outbreak occurs. Nyong'o plays the sweet but badass teacher who plays Taylor Swift music on her ukulele when she isn't busy killing all the zombies. Our two main characters have to team up to protect the class full of children, and even if you're not a big fan of kids, I think you're still going to be rooting for them to make it in this one because this is just such a sweet and charming little comedy. It's very character focused. It isn't a very violent or gory zombie movie, but it's still a lot of fun, and I highly recommend it because I also can't stand Josh Gad like most people, but he's hilarious in this movie, like actually hilarious. Plus, Lupita Nyong'o is an absolute badass, giving an excellent performance, so it's worth watching for those two alone. Number 6 is Greener Grass. This one is light on the horror elements, but stick with me because this movie is an absolute nightmare. This dark, psychological, surreal comedy is set in an upscale suburb and follows Jill and Lisa, two best friends who are constantly obsessed with status and politeness and projecting the best image they can to those around them. This movie is bonkers because it feels like it exists within a dream. Like, whenever you're dreaming and you have this goal that you just have to accomplish for whatever reason because it's dream logic, you're like, I just gotta get to the store, and it's just has to happen. Well, there are things that just happen in this movie that are ridiculous. Like, in the beginning, there's a woman who just gives her baby to another woman, like, hey, want my baby? And she's like, sure. Like, she's just handing off her sandwich at lunch or something. And the movie just goes with it. It just takes these things and then they just happen. It is absolutely absurd, and I know it won't be for everyone, but give it a shot and give it a good half hour because it takes a minute to sort of build its world, but once things settle into what the movie is doing, yeah, it turns into that nightmare I was talking about. Number 5 is Tragedy Girls, a dark comedy slasher about two social media obsessed teenage girls who decide that their claim to fame will be through murder. They kill off fellow classmates and cover it on a blog while framing a local serial killer. It sounds a little disturbing, but this is a very satirical look at the way that social media is used today. And I have to say, this was an instant favorite for me. I would classify this under bitchy horror. Gay horror fans, I think, know what I'm talking about, but this one is dark in its humor without shying away from the blood and guts, and it kind of feels like a bit of a modern-day Heathers. Oh, hello, segue. Number 4 is Heathers, the classic 80s dark teen comedy starring Winona Ryder as a member of the elite popular girl squad of high school known as the Heathers. They're the original plastics. But when bad boy Christian Slater comes to town and Winona falls for him head over heels, they begin picking off other classmates, but making it look like suicides. This is the original dark teen comedy cult classic, 80s Winona is my everything. And this is the movie that Tina Fey said she watched a whole bunch while putting together Mean Girls. You're welcome. Number 3 is A Simple Favor, a mystery comedy about a boring, lame housewife played by Anna Kendrick who befriends the very interesting executive boss bitch type played by Blake Lively shortly before Lively's character goes missing. So Boring Mom decides to be Nancy Drew and find out what happened. This is certainly the most comedic on the list, but that's okay. Pair this with Tragedy Girls for a very fun girls' night double feature in. I'd suggest going in as blind as possible because I remember seeing this for the first time and I thought it was going to be like an actual psychological drama thriller or something, and it really is a comedy with these mystery detective elements, but it is so funny, and the twists and turns of the story, it is such a fun ride to go along, which is my favorite thing. Anna Kendrick and Blake Lively both give my personal favorite performances from them in this movie. It's just so entertaining to watch just the two of them. This whole movie is just so entertaining, and I feel like a lot of people haven't given it a chance. They either think it's too light for the horror comedy or it is too dark for just a chick flick. Whatever, I don't care. Watch A Simple Favor.
I guess I'm probably not the kind of person you're normally friends with.
Oh, you do not want to be friends with me. Trust me.
Number 2 is Anna and the Apocalypse, another zombie comedy, but the twist with this one is that it's also a musical. Anna is an average teenager just trying to get through the holiday season when zombies begin taking over. Anna and her friends sing their way to survival in the most fun, new holiday-themed horror movie of recent years. To be perfectly honest, I'm not the biggest fan of musicals, but I think the music numbers are used to great effect in this movie because they're not only catchy and fun, but they also create these very entertaining sequences that keep things fresh throughout the runtime. Normally, I would say, you know, save this one for the holidays. You're going to want to watch it around Christmas, but you know how things go with streaming. You're going to want to watch this tonight before it disappears. And number 1 is Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, a movie I will take every opportunity to talk about. And I feel like I kind of have to explain it to those in the back, but let me just say, way back in the day when you could only watch whatever was playing on television, stations would play these blocks of different movies, and they would have hosts like Elvira pop in during commercial breaks to make some comments and talk about it, and it was a whole fun thing. Elvira made fun of a whole bunch of old cheesy movies in the 80s, and she, of course, like everything in the 80s, got her own movie. In this goofy comedy, Elvira is looking to end her show so she can start an act in Vegas when she learns that her great aunt passed away and she is summoned to New England for a will reading. Elvira learns she has inherited a house, but the prudish townspeople stuck in the 50s clash with Elvira as she becomes a role model for the local teenagers. This movie is one long string of sexual innuendos. In fact, I would say watch this with the subtitles on just because there are so many jokes. I swear every time I watch this, I find a new joke that cracks me up. This movie is just hilarious.
I can only play G-rated movies.
Oh, well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with G-rated movies as long as there's lots of sex and violence.
I would like to come back as Elvira in my next life, please. One thing I really enjoy about this movie is that it seems to encapsulate 80s horror and that you have all these people stuck in the 50s and then Elvira is very 80s and she just bursts onto the scene with her big hair and her big boobs and she's like, people, what are you doing? We've got a future to get to. This one is very silly and it doesn't have a whole lot of spooky stuff going on, but Elvira is a horror icon. Hello. I never would have thought her movie is actually as good as it is. I mean, it's also pretty bad, but it's the right kind of bad watch it, you'll know what I mean. I hope they keep this one around for a little while because this is one of my favorite movies to watch around Halloween. Let me know if you agree. Thank you so much for watching this video. I greatly appreciate it, especially if you made it this far. Bonus points for you. You get a sticker. Like this video if you want to see more of these here on the channel. Let me know what your favorites are in the comments below. I know these were a lot of like, you know, light horror, horror comedy, dark, whatever. You know what? It works. These are all really fun movies that I'm looking forward to rewatch, but I would definitely want to hear what you guys think of them. Thanks again, as always. That is it for this video, but I won't stop you from watching another.